Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center.
You got any New Year's resolutions? Do you do New Year's resolutions?
Well, it's complicated because of how I don't really relate to this as the only New Year by a lot.
You have there's Lunar New Year.
Between the Jewish New Years, of which there are actually more than one, the Buddhist New Year's, and like various seasonal and astronomical things, like, you know, the winter solstice, as we talked about, is sort of like a big turning point for me, and that's a little before New Year's. It's I definitely observe January 1st and the rollover of the calendar as a big deal, but in a very secular way. Not that that's not of spiritual importance, you know, like it's in the realm of work and relationships and planning and schedules and, taxes, and like there's bad things too. It's just like the year rolling over has a very like everyday kind of effect. So I do kind of, I don't know. I mean, like I don't have a habit or practice of making resolutions, but I definitely take that opportunity to change some patterns or habits.
Yeah.
And a couple of things have changed. I took a couple of weeks off of formal practice because I was pretty sick, and the issue was I was unable to sleep. So I was taking my morning practice time to sleep because I was having so much trouble falling asleep.
Sleep is important.
So I got over that just in time. So I'm back on the morning practice train, and that's one thing that I feel sort of renewed by the year. And then another thing is a bunch of my childhood friends dared each other to do 10,000 push-ups this year. As somebody
just in total?
Yeah. So like 30-ish a day. We started a sort of like group taunting message thread for it, and it's going fine. Everybody's still staying on top of it. And that's weird. I've never done like one of those totally normie like exercise resolutions before, but it's been fun.
I mean, y'all are gonna have like some I guess big arms. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope
so. It's very specific. I just try to like exercise every day, but I guess you're gonna get really good at push-ups.
Yes, that's the hope. I've never been super great at them, but
I'm not either.
It feels really good. It's
good.
Actually, I mean, like I'm relating to it as a movement practice, like all the other ones I do, and so
absolutely.
I'm really feeling the sensations of it, and I'm actually finding that it has a kind of special cardiovascular quality. Like there's a big rush after 30 push-ups in a row that I don't feel with other forms of like cardio exercise, or really like the rush that I am used to with like cardio is associated with like agony and pain, and this feels really good instead. There is a burn, but it's like also a rush, and so I'm feeling those sensations and really enjoying them, and hopefully getting stronger.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
What about you? Is it a thing for you?
Yeah, well, I don't always do it, but I did write down a few resolutions because I think there were some things that I was unhappy about throughout the year and thought like, well, maybe I should just work on those things. But I did also think about it for a second. It was like, well, maybe my perspective of the year is just a little off. I think that when we're used to hearing bad things all the time, we've talked about how the media and just what people are saying can affect your perception of things. And, I'm like, well, I know that I hadn't been the happiest towards the end of the year, and maybe that in combination with like the Omicron virus, I feel like a lot of people are getting Omicron about now.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily think of as a bad thing. Like my doctor today told me like, probably everybody's going to get it eventually.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe that could be a good thing in the long run. In the short run, it's going to be tough, but But anyway, so I was thinking like, well, maybe everybody talks about how, oh gosh, 2021 was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I don't think it really was horrible on an individual level, at least. I don't feel like it was horrible. And so I wrote down, before I did any resolutions, I was like, let me just write down all the things that I enjoyed about 2021.
Cool.
And I didn't write down the things that I didn't enjoy because I feel like I hear those all the time and I didn't need to hear it then, you know?
Yes.
And I just started writing down, and it was just like, I was talking to my roommate about it and my husband. I was just like, there's so many things. Well, one, we started the podcast, and we, you know, did a whole year of this podcast, and I know that helped a lot of people at least get started with Buddhism or learn about the community. And I think that's amazing. I graduated with my master's degree. I got a job. I got legally married. I was already married, but you know, with the government. And there are all these wonderful things that, like, if you don't take the time and recognize some of the things that you are grateful for, it could just seem like everything's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about this around Thanksgiving too, didn't we? Just sort of like gratitude opportunities that come with reflection on time that has passed, and like a moment of rolling over the calendar is like a perfect opportunity to think about what's happened since the last time. And yeah, I think that there are kind of two things going on with like your observation, which I could also make of like many wonderful things that happened in the last year, and this sort of maybe social sense in which 2021 was the worst year ever and everybody hated it. And, you know, like I can tap into that feeling if I want to. Like
I could too.
I can allow myself to feel like 2021 was a horrible interval.
But I'm starting to realize that it's not exactly real.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it is, but it also isn't.
Yeah. And like, the line, drawing lines from January 1st, 2021 to January 1st, 2022 feels especially arbitrary because that's not even the whole duration of the ordeal that we're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
And like, it's not over either. But the it seems like, I mean, even if it's just for practical reasons, the skillful thing to do is just to sort of accept that background as what's happening, and then compare, like find the ways that we rose to that challenge to be the bright spots. And like we did it in so many ways. You named a bunch of them. And yeah, like I've been thinking about Omicron too, you know, almost as like an omen, or like a, you know, like a Omicron as a sign of what's happening. And you know, my dad had it like a week ago.
My mom had it too, or maybe she still has it right now.
Yeah, like mine's testing negative. Like I've seen him, it's over, you know. And so like some of the worst fears, like that was the worst fear of the whole pandemic. You know, I guess like my unvaccinated like toddlers getting it remains as a fear, but I've known a bunch of toddlers who've gotten it and haven't gotten very sick. So
yeah, just from like an average standpoint, I don't think that it's getting like children that young very sick.
Yeah, and this was with prior variants. Like I don't actually.
Yeah, so now.
It's so
even easier.
It's less scary to me now. You know, I've got a booster. You know, I'm not scared at all of getting it. And so now, so
I'm
now
not either, but the cold was really uncomfortable, so I just don't want to get sick again.
Yes,
but.
And like I just had 2 weeks of being super sick and tested negative 4 times for COVID during that. So, you know, it's like, you know, it's there was a little bit of a like, ugh, I'm not even getting it over with kind of feeling, you know? But yeah, inevitably thoughts turn to maybe this is it kinds of things. Like if everyone gets it, like we get to that point where there's total immunity and COVID recedes into the background and is also mutated to not be as serious of a disease. And, you know, maybe this is the beginning of the end kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And that I'm not like getting very attached to that.
I don't
happening.
want to either, but yeah, I do have a hope there.
Yeah. Like there's a little bit of hope, but also what it's causing me to do is sort of turn my thoughts towards how will I, you know, sort of my post-COVID resolutions, you know, like the new year is still in the midst of this, but like there's a moment that I'm starting to pay attention to where, you know, a lot of the things about my life that I had to change for COVID, that I will be able to change when there's a sufficient feeling of after COVID, back to the way they were or into a new way. Like I'm starting to think about them and be like, well, when I can get together with people inside again, what will I do? There's a possibility of at work of going into the office, commuting to an office, which I haven't done. Yeah. We do have an office here, but I worked from home the whole time, and don't have a particular need to be in the office. But if it were easy enough to commute, I would. And, you know, like if I could get on MARTA in downtown Decatur and like, you know, go to work, I would absolutely do that every day if my kid, you know, once my kids are in school and stuff like that. So like I'm beginning to think about a life that has been impossible for the past 2 years and how much I'm going to cherish that, at least for a while, you know. But I'm also thinking about the things that are better for my lifestyle that have happened as a result of this shift into the home and things that I won't want to give up. And just making these assessments and sort of thinking about my choices and imagining what, like sort of making the best of both worlds of the post-COVID life is really helping me think in a longer term way, think in terms of growth and change and hope, rather than just like, this is going to be this forever. I'm going to be sitting at home forever in an unending plague like I've been for 2 years, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't exactly relate to New Year's 2022 as like a marker of the end of the COVID era by any means.
No, not me either.
It does sort of have these echoes of like, oh, there's a future. Like I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah. I'm also at this point where I want to go back and think about, why does the pandemic make me so upset? I know that sounds stupid. Like, well, yeah, like I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why it would make you upset, and they're all valid. But I want to know why. I want to know why it's personally making me upset.
Yeah.
And how much of that is actually still in my control, and how much of that is a mindset, and how much of that is my perception of things, you know. And I do know that, you know, meditation especially can help you really see how much of something is actually your mindset. And I've, you know, taken a break from meditation. I've done it here and there, just like when the inspiration arose, but like I haven't had like a steady practice because I've just felt so depressed. So I'm willing to now kind of get back up, because I want to see how much of my perception is real, I guess. And maybe we never exactly see that, but I do think that it helps you see the truth a little bit, you know, see some I don't know, silhouette of the truth.
Or see around the sort of big hulking silhouette of your own illusions or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know that I've been almost kind of aware that I have been sitting in some sort of delusion of what I think things are like versus what they're actually like. But I think there is also a point where you have to be ready to leave that space.
Mm-hmm.
It can be, I don't know, it can be kind of comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
To stay there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, these 2 weeks that I just took off have been the longest since before COVID started that I've gone without doing daily Zazen. And I noticed that I was going crazy a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but didn't necessarily directly attribute it to the practice falling off.
Mm-hmm.
And actually in the first week of it, I remember feeling like, wow, I feel the same. Like I feel like just as alive and awake to my experience, and I'm not doing Zazen. Like maybe I've made it to that Zazen all the time period and that phase, that everybody talks about in the literature. And I don't have to sit and look at the wall for 45 minutes every day. I can just sort of do everything and be meditating. And like, I didn't notice when that feeling went away, but by the end of the second week, I was a complete mess. And then the first night that I was able to sleep through the night, I got up early and I sat, and I was like shocked at how I felt, and I still feel that way now. And it's kind of like, if this is how I felt every day for like 2 years, and then and how I felt yesterday is how I felt for my whole life before that, like that's astonishing. Like it's such a different perspective. It's such different
Mm-hmm.
sensations. And it I'm not saying it's always like this or that it's like this for everyone, but I had gotten comfortable. I had gotten comfortable suffering again.
Yeah.
Because there's something comfortable of like routine, like doing things in a cognitive routine instead of like
Yes.
being
Yes.
like having to respond in an alive way to everything that happens, which is deeply uncomfortable, but it's also amazing.
I think that one, going to Austin to see my dad,
Yeah.
disrupting my entire routine, and then also like getting sick with a cold, like it disrupted it so much that it made it to a point where I was like, well, I could create like a new one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think like one time my stepdad had a heart attack and he was in like a coma for at least a week. I don't remember how long he was in, but it was kind of bad. But when he got out, because he hadn't smoked a cigarette in like 2 weeks or something like that, he never smoked a cigarette again after
Awesome. Yeah.
that. Like he didn't have to go through the like withdrawals or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's like sometimes if your routine gets disrupted so much, like you can have an opportunity to be like, all right, let's scratch everything and start over. But it can be really hard to do that if you are in the routine and you are comfortable with it. Even if it's not good for you, you can still be comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the first mechanisms of action of Zazen, right? It like makes you uncomfortable, literally physically makes you uncomfortable, but also very quickly after that, I feel it psychologically makes you uncomfortable. It makes you uncomfortable with your habits and patterns and conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't cause you to change, but it gives you the motivation and the opportunity to change because you see it all in a new way in the way that you're describing. And if you remain in the same functional patterns, there's no opportunity there to change it. And so Zazen almost is like the coma that lets you sort of wake up to the new situation without giving you the chance to like lapse back into the old way.
That's interesting. I mean, I would certainly think that at the very least, if you went to a retreat, that would be the you would definitely have to even reset your actual routines and then almost like start up with this whole like it can be extreme, especially, we've talked about that if you've never done it before or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not all I'm saying is not many people are as disciplined as you. I don't know if Zazen is enough all the time to reset everything unless you are as disciplined as you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But like I mean, even Zen monks required seasonal retreat as part of their training, right?
True.
Like I sort of think that's the wisdom of that seasonal schedule, 4 times a year schedule in traditional Zen. The whole world around you is resetting its routine. Everywhere you look, the the leaves are turning and the days are getting longer or shorter, and the animals are changing their behavior, and so you have the same opportunity to dive into that transition and come out the other side in a different situation. And that is, daily practice is different from that. Daily practice is kind of just a recalibration on a day-to-day basis, but it transitions like the seasons, but also like the new year, and also like the end of the pandemic, whatever that means. Like transitions aren't always these clean moments where the clock strikes midnight and the calendar year rolls over, but
Yeah.
sometimes they take a long time. Sometimes the new thing is phasing in while the old thing is still phasing out, and there's an overlap. Sure. And it's uncomfortable. But regardless, there is something to notice about the transition kind of at every time. And so the role of intensive practice in Zen, I feel like, is to intensify transition to the point where it feels like you're a whole new person afterwards. Mm-hmm. And then why bother continuing to do things the way that you used to if that's not what the situation calls for? And that sounds like the feeling you're having about practice. And I also think that what you're saying echoes something Sensei teaches all the time, which is, I mean, to me, he said it in a phrase that seemed like perfectly calibrated to drive me personally crazy, which was, you need to get a little more sloppy in your Zazen. And I think what he actually, and also like when I told him that I'd taken a couple of weeks off from being sick, he was like, oh, good.
Yeah.
know? So like, I think what he's getting at is, we create these transitions for ourselves in our practice all the time. And if you just sit like a statue staring at the wall in the same way at the same time in the same place every single day of your life, there is no transition taking place in your practice. But if you're pulled away and stopping and starting and changing it and changing what you're bringing to it, it has a brand newness to it.
Yeah, no, I like that. That is really important. And I think that was also the problem I was having by the end of the year, because it did feel like, whether it was true or not, that things were just staying the same for a really long time.
Uh-huh.
And I think that is important, these transitions, to recognize these transitions and just reflect on some things. And if you reflect on if you want things to change, or if there were things that you were happy about. I think that's an important time. And I think you're right. I think doing it once a year, probably not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably, maybe 4 times a year would be better, just to reevaluate things on like sort of a quarterly basis.
You're laughing because it feels like a worky corporate way of looking at it. But like, funnily enough, that's also how Earth does it.
Yeah, true. It does. And, yeah, I think that it can be like we've been saying, it can be really comfortable to just not change anything up and not like it, just be like, okay, well, this is working, and okay, fine, that's how we're gonna do it. I like this idea of being like, okay, it's been 4 months. How is my Zazen routine going? How is my all other routines? How's my work routine going? How's my eating routine going. Like, are there things that I want to change? And I think before I started working, I actually did do that, but I had a lot more freedom to recognize it. So now I'm thinking, well, what stopped me from recognizing it this year? What were those forces in place that kept me from thinking there was a transition in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe that's what I'm not liking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm not recognizing these transitions as easily. Like, okay, I'm in a room with like, how many windows are there? Gosh, so many windows in this room.
Mm-hmm.
I can physically see when the leaves are changing. I can physically feel the room gets colder when it's cold outside. I go on a walk, but even when I'm noticing these things, I'm distracted.
Yeah.
So there needs to be something where we kind of tie the physical environment with our routines. I think that's important. Maybe that's what you were talking about last time with like the lunar calendar and stuff.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely
wasn't quite getting it, but yeah.
that absolutely was, but it's not all. That's not all of it either. And you're also bringing up something really important, which is how many things that we can't avoid, like, militate against us doing that. And the pandemic is an example of that. And you said it a minute ago that like work itself also is like and it's not just monotony. It's like they impose their own time. You know, like COVID does have cycles. COVID has very crazy, erratic, unpredictable cycles of like waves of sickness and waves of recovery. And like, you can't predict it and you can't run your life on it at all. And then work has its sort of robotic corporate schedule, and it's so over determined in terms of like getting things done by the end of Friday, and if it doesn't get done on Friday, it's going to be Monday, and like all these other cycles, and that is just distracting from any other way of sensing transition.
Personally think I did that to myself though. Because I think like that's how work has to go. Yeah. You're at work for a certain amount of time and you have to think only about work. Then you get off of work and do whatever you want. And I think I'm wrong. Or at least I don't think, if I keep doing it this way, I don't think it's sustainable. Mm-hmm. What I did this week, and like I'm getting back in the hang of the swing of things, and also like I was saying, my cycle's been sort of disrupted. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wait, why can't I just sit down for 10 minutes and do laundry? Mm. My work doesn't care. My work cares that I do 8 hours a day and that I do my work. It doesn't care if I took 10 minutes to do laundry, or if I took a 20-minute bath at one point in the day, or if I took a walk even outside of a meeting and just experienced the day. Yeah, those things might add a little bit of time to the end of your day, but you're actually experiencing the day, which I think is much more important than the actual time you're off, like you're off and are free or whatever. Like, yeah. I think the idea that like I'm on the clock, therefore I'm not free, is the problem. Mm-hmm. Mm. And I made that happen. I did that to myself. Mm. There's like also times during the day, just like times during the year, where we have to step back and recognize what's going on during the day, and not like actual things that are happening, but just like, what's the temperature outside? Like, what are the birds doing? How's my body feeling? What do I need right now? Those kind of things. I think I would sit there all day and not think about anything like that. And I think that's where a lot of my depression came from too. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of factors, but I think that kind of, I'm at work and there's 8 hours until I get off, and then I can do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, that's not really living to me.
Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web at ASZC.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.